Welcome back to Rookie Pastors Podcast, a podcast of casual conversations about real ministry by real pastors. I am your host today, Josh Prince, and I am joined by Kyle Neiman and Bryan Colley. Guys, it is the most magical time of year. Pitchers and catchers have reported. The rest of the team is starting to roll in. So, happy baseball season to both of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully it is a happy baseball season.
Yeah. As long as we don't go to sleep, Astros fans, we can sleep better at night. Well, so today we are discussing some aspects of networking, the need for it, the encouragement behind it. And so it got me thinking about the places that I like to go when I like to network with people. So my question to throw out to you guys is, what is kind of your go-to spot for a lunch meeting?
Lunch meetings tough because I like meeting at coffee shops, even though I don't drink very much coffee anymore. There's a great coffee shop here in Fort Worth, the Fort Worth Coffee Company, that I would normally go to. But I always like to go someplace like with a local flavor. So lately there's a Thai place right across the street from our church called Bangkok House, trying to build some relationships with the people there, the owners and the workers there. So that's been my go-to spot is Bangkok House. I love Thai food, so that certainly helps. So yeah, I try to make it a place where not only is it good for, it's not going to be overly crowded, good for connecting and having conversation, but also can maybe kind of plug into the community a little bit. So that's usually my goal.
Have you seen there's these influencers, or I don't know if they're influencers, but it's like this social media challenge. Well, they'll go to the same restaurant repeatedly until like the person taking the order knows like their go-to order. So you should try and do that at your spot there.
Yeah. Well, and they have there's a Thai dish that I had when I was on mission trip in Thailand, and I haven't been able to find it. And it's called khao soi. They actually have it there. They say, oh, we have it every day. It's off menu. And I'm like, oh, and so I go and order that. So I'm kind of becoming that guy there, but
yeah,
I probably need to go more often.
Colley, what you got?
Yeah. For us, my go-to, it's hard. We don't have a lot of great options here to eat. It depends on the what is the goal of the meal. Am I wanting to have a serious conversation, or is it a conversation that, it's okay if there's distractions? We have a place in town that's a buffet called Lone Star, but they also have a regular menu, and their buffet is like half Golden Corral, half pizza, like CC's, on a miniature scale. And so that's good because there's a variety, right. Or I could order off the menu. And that seems to be a place that a lot of church members are at lunch that I can run into, and they can see that I'm meeting with people, that whole, this is your verification that I work more than Sunday. But it's real loud. And so it's not a great place for a serious conversation. If I'm going to do a serious conversation, as crazy as this sounds, Brahms is really good. So we can get a good burger, and they turn over fast, their tables fast. So it's usually not super, super crazy. So,
and you can grocery shop on your way out.
Yeah.
I can. And I can get some peppermint ice cream.
Yeah. Not much better than that.
It's an all-in-one. It's all-in-one.
They're so good. I love Brahms.
And cheap.
It's great. Yeah. Super cheap. Yeah. So my go-to in honor of Michael Scott is Chili's. I love a good Chili's lunch meeting. In fact, I had one yesterday.
There you go.
Yeah. I like to go to Chili's. It's a great spot. Of course, coffee shops are my preference, but we're talking lunch, so it's typically on the top of the list, if not Chipotle. Well, good deal. Well, we're not going to be talking about eating at lunches and networking anymore. We're going to talk more about the network, right? So networking I feel like there's multiple aspects to it, right? An aspect of networking is, good friendship, relationship, encouragement. Networking is also knowing important people, vital people, whether it be people in the community or, connections within the church as well. And so all of them are important. All of them kind of require a little bit different, connections or intentionality behind it. So we're going to explore kind of both of them as far as the friendship aspect of network, and kind of the business side, if we will, of pastoral networking. So who have been some of the more meaningful and beneficial network connections that you guys have made in the last couple of years in ministry?
Dustin Slayton.
100%. Yeah.
He
He
What
opens
does.
would
the
we
door
do?
to everything. So, um, really, I joke about that, but like over the past few years, you guys have been a great, not just for a friendship, but the networking
That's the only reason I
of,
asked the question. I just wanted us to applaud one another. That's really
yeah,
Please.
but we can
More
connect.
praise. More praise. Come on.
Yeah, we can connect with other people. Plus, and I joke about Dustin. Dustin's in the know of things that are going on, because of
Yeah.
his role, on a committee at TXB, and so we can ask him questions.
he
But
gives us the tea.
uh, yeah, so yeah, that's that. Then just connections at Texas Baptist. Those are have been beneficial for knowledge, but also wisdom navigating this stuff.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
For me, I did a lot of networking when I was a student pastor at my previous church. I'm really trying to connect with all these student ministries all across the city. When I came here to White Settlement, West Fort Worth area, it was close to where I was, but it really felt like a whole different area. So I wanted to make connections that made me feel like I was a part of the community as quick as possible. I wanted to have a pulse on the community. And so it started with just as many pastors in the area as I could get around me. There were three guys from three of the local Baptist churches that really kind of welcomed me in, and we had lunches together once a month, and it was a really great way to kind of ground me in this community. And so I look back at that being one of the most beneficial things in helping me get connected here in the community really quickly. I've shared before my relationship with the police chief here through the questions that our revitalization program, PAVE, with Texas Baptist really encouraged us to do. I mean, that was obviously the most beneficial for getting a foot in the community. And so, but as far as like just my own kind of spiritual health, especially those first few months, those three guys, pastors of communities, it was before I met you guys. That really helped me not feel alone in what I was doing, and so it was essential that I do that quickly. I didn't realize how meaningful that was at the time, but I still am so appreciative of those guys and that season of me getting started.
Yeah. Yeah, when I moved to Cedar Hill, I reached out to Ryan Jesperson, who's the executive director of the Dallas Baptist Association, and I said, "Hey, I want to have a guy that's local, but is far more seasoned in pastoring than me. And so, can you just think on some of the guys you know that are around us, and that you think we would make a good connection?" And so he introduced me to a guy named Bruce, who's a pastor at First Baptist Midlothian, who is our dad's age, but he's so incredible. We meet very sporadically, but when we do, it's always an encouragement. And like he'll randomly sometimes just send me a text where he's just, "Hey, I'm proud of you." He saw something on social media or
Yeah,
whatever it might be, but it's great because I'll just sit there with him. I mean, this last time we were just like talking about family dynamics, and he was talking to me about raising pastor kids and the fact that he didn't want them known as pastors' kids. He wanted them known as Bruce's kids, or you know,
yeah,
more importantly, their own identity. And so that was a real big encouragement for me, just thinking through life and not so much the ministry pastoral side, although that does come up. But it's been always encouraging for me to sit down with him and just kind of think through marriage and family and, time off and all that good stuff. I think the other one is I'm grateful church in our town just made a transition to a new pastor, kind of a succession plan. And that guy's around my age. And so, we're going to be in Cedar Hill together for a while. So it's been really
mhm,
cool for us to connect and find that source of encouragement. Like I said, I met yesterday at Chili's. I was with him, and, we talked about important ministry things and a whole lot of nothing as well. And so all of it was really beneficial, but it's cool. Cause like, we've seen some acceleration within our college ministry, and they're
mhm.
really kicking off some college ministry stuff. And so just kind of talking through those strategies, the timeline that we faced, and honestly getting to encourage him and what I'm already seeing. So, those kind of ministerial, sharpening, encouraging relationships, I think are super beneficial. But let's talk about kind of the other side for a second, as far as maybe community leaders, community organizations, or just maybe ministries outside of your own. How have you gone about connecting with those types of organizations and community leaders?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I mentioned the police chief here in White Settlement. So that really started with, just me asking, hey, can I sit down and meet with you? And from there, we actually created a pastoral coalition connecting with all the other pastors in the area. And it's been a really helpful thing for me to continue to network, but also to have a pulse on what's going on in the community. But I just started making phone calls. I called the city manager, sat down with him. Had I've had several meetings with the superintendent of the school district here, and just you think, man, I might be bothering somebody, but you're not, and if you are, they won't meet with you. So just don't worry about who you might be bothering or burdening, but I keep thinking about, okay, who else can I just connect with? And so from there, look for those open doors. So again, that pastors coalition was a big open door for us to continue to meet with city leaders. The mayor attends that now. A lot of times the fire chief is attending that. So, and then along with other pastors, I got invited into the Chamber of Commerce and through some of these connections. And so I go to a Chamber of Commerce meetings and I meet with people who are business leaders in the area all the time. It all started by just making those early phone calls early in my time being here. And I think the longer we wait, we get we get a little bit more isolated in our thinking, and we build our connections around our church connections rather than quickly branching out and being very broad in our approach to networking. And so, like you said right off the beginning, Josh, our networking does have to be so much more than just those church connections, so much more than just pastor to pastor connections. We have to see what we can do to have our ear to the ground, what's going on in the community, because we never know what's going to pop up to realize, yeah, our church can meet that need.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I've done to go about. Just keep making phone calls, and when those doors open, walk through.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so I'm actually when I moved here, I got lucky. On my search team was the city manager and a city councilman and a future city
It's
councilman,
cheating.
and and
It's cheating.
the mayor was chairman of personnel, and he's now no longer mayor. He's actually running for county judge, which will open up a whole nother avenue of networking there. But I'm in a deal. It's a leadership cohort that the city or an organization here in the city puts on. That it's basically they pull back the curtains on how the city operates, how the school district operates, how the university, like we'll get inside to the university, and then the main industries and businesses in town. I think there's 20 people in the class right now, and they're all from influential parts of the community, different, whether like the director of utilities services, the, other pastors, and, just different people. If you have something like that in your town, you need to get into that. I did
Yeah.
it in another town that was just mainly for the school district, but you still build relationships and you get to meet people, and really opens the door for you to say, how can we help meet the needs of our community? The police chief's in my class as well. So like those 7 interviews, boom, they're like knocked out. But that's the greatest way to, especially coming from a super small town where it was very easy because everybody knew who I was, to a larger community that my family is not necessarily in the school district in this community. How am I going to get into the that area? This has been really great for me to be able to do that. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
it's
you hit
awesome.
it, like, just kind of the spectrum of, the population within your town can affect, to what degree can you get involved and can you get
Mhm.
connected? And so smaller towns, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, you're going to be known, which, being known is not a horrible thing, right? It gets you some really valuable connections, but it can also lead to all kinds of drama.
Yeah.
But, those types of connections are great. We came here, population in Cedar Hills, over 40,000. And so it's not a small town, although they kind of act like they are sometimes. But early on, I actually I had to do something at the city, and I kind of asked, could I meet with the mayor? And he had just started as well. It was a big transition. The mayor before him had served for decades, and so it was cool just to sit down and it became just a very personal conversation, kind of how he was raised and how he got to the seat that he was sitting in now. And, some of the plans and desires he had for the city. For me, honestly, on the networking side of things with revitalization is there was some severed relationships within the community and the church. And so it was, not trying to get into that stuff, but trying to show, we're hopeful to resolve some of this stuff, right? City had made plenty of mistakes. The church had made some mistakes. And so how we interact with those things and not, distance ourselves too much, kind of like what you were saying, Kyle. So I think making those connections are really important. And I think that sometimes we can be driven to make the connection because they're an influential person in the community. We can't forget that these are, human beings who might need spiritual
Right.
encouragement.
Mhm.
It's great
Right.
because obviously Bryan is pastoring half of the influential people in commerce now. But
That's right. That's right.
for the rest of us, nobody's like, just making those connections, I think is really good. And for us, the uniqueness of Cedar Hill is with us being downtown, the city is trying to invest in downtown. So
Mhm.
we've really tried to be part of those conversations as best we can. Businesses, I think, kind of have the first place in those conversations as they should with commerce and things like that. But it's been cool to sit in and to brainstorm and to,
Yeah.
think through how we can get involved. And that's led to us being host to events and, being active in it. And so, all of those connections are good. They're just going to vary. Sometimes those leaders in the community are really needing your pastoral support, but sometimes it's just you're another business in the community. And so making those connections
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah. Josh, let me throw something out there on that. The three of us all pastor, or actually all four of us pastor First Baptist churches. And if you're in the South, especially, there's a weight that it carries with being the pastor of the First Baptist church in your town. Don't use it arrogantly, but use that. Like, I mean, it really is like you can go in and just say, hey, I'm the pastor of First Baptist. Can I get a meeting with this person, or can I? And that just seems you're no longer just necessarily the average person on the street. There's credence in you being there. And those that are listening, your city it might be a different church that, or whatever, but I know in my context that has always carried a weight that, you're that church. Even though our church struggles to do stuff in the community, there's just still the weight of that name. So
Yeah.
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 So, in regards to both the more personal, meaningful networking relationships you're making, kind of pastor to pastor, ministry leader to ministry leader, and then these other connections that you're making, kind of on the business side of the church, how have those network connections strengthened your leadership? How has it affected your leadership in a positive way? And how has it maybe even encouraged your calling that you have as a pastor?
Yeah, I think, for a long time, and so we have the Rookie Pastors podcast, and all of us are moving into a longer season of ministry. It's feeling less and less like we're rookie pastors, but I still very much remember my first year in this area and feeling like I'm a nobody, and not in a shameful way, but it's just like I don't have um I don't have any gravitas to me. I don't have any, like, why would anybody listen to me? But those regular meetings with people in the community, regular meetings with other pastors is a great reminder. I feel like every pastor needs to learn this. And it's just a reminder that we are just all humans trying to do the best we can. And if we have this mindset of we're all in this to help one another, then it's no longer about like who's who's got the most skill or who's got the most influence in an area. That doesn't matter anymore, as long as you continue to present yourself as just wanting to help. And so when I kind of like let go of this idea of I'm not I'm not worth people listening to, and just realize I'm just here to pastor. That was a bolstering moment for my leadership and my pastoring. And so I just realized I can pastor anybody. It doesn't have to just be people in my church. I can be that person in a moment. So I started as a chaplain for the police department, again, through those connections. And just the other day, I won't go into a ton of details, but they called me up to help with a difficult situation. And I was talking with the officer after that. And this sergeant, she just said, "That's the first time I've had to do that difficult situation." I said, "Well, I've had to do it a handful of times." And she's like, "I'm so glad you were here with me when we did this." And I was like, "Man, like this is the first time I've met this particular officer, the first time her and I have talked, and I was a pastor for her for a few moments." And what an encouraging thing. So the more and more we put ourselves in these opportunities, in networking opportunities to be a pastor to people, the more you feel just emboldened in your role. Is emboldened a word? I think it is. You feel encouraged in your role as a pastor. You feel like motivated in that, and you carry that into your work in the church that the Lord has placed you. And so, yeah, there's just been so many of those little opportunities just to be a pastor within those networking situations.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, Kyle, similar to what you're talking about. I'm not, I don't have official roles, but city leaders. We had an incident a week or so ago, and they reached out and said, "Hey, if anybody needs to talk, can you be available?" Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's my goal in utilizing this networking, is just so that they know that I'm here. I'm not going to push anything on them, but when difficulties come into place, we're here for you. And I think just strengthening my leadership and encouraging my calling, it's, learning from others that have either been through it or are going through something we haven't been through, or just being curious about how would you handle something like this, and knowing that we all struggle with it, no matter the size of our church, the style of our church, the location. We all go through things, but also just sharpen ourselves about, how would regularly we're texting, "Hey, I'm working through this passage for Sunday. I'm thinking about saying it this way. What do you guys think?" Those
Yeah.
type of deals. It just continues to, the whole iron sharpens iron. And from a ministry perspective, yes, but then when you're building relationships with people in your community, however influential they might be, you can learn business business tips, marketing ideas, things like that can help you do your ministry better.
Yeah, to echo that real quick, like that's one of those great benefits of broadening your network is when you hit difficulties, struggles, or things that are uncertain, the more people you've met with, the more you know, oh, so and so has dealt with this. Whether it be another pastor or somebody in the community, somebody's dealt with that. I can be like, hey, I remember you telling me about this. Can you walk me through? This is what I'm currently dealing with, because there are specific connections I've made where I'm like, that's the person I call if I'm having a problem with that issue. And yeah, I might not call this person if I'm dealing with, angry deacon or something like that. I'll maybe reach out to one of you guys.
Call the police chief.
Yeah. Um, but the more you broaden your network, the more you're going to see just those opportunities to learn from other people and to gain that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say, I think the aspect of um, isolation in ministry is highly tempting. We
Mm,
want
yeah.
to make ourselves think that nobody can understand. Maybe because we want ourselves to feel important, or maybe because we want to justify, just pulling away, or sulking, whatever it might be. And so, the
Mm,
reality is, there's other people who know what you're going through to some
yeah.
degree, and pastoral wise, like there's going to be other pastors who have been there, who have walked in the same mud that you have. But then there's also these kind of cool leaders that are out there that have maybe gone through some of those other struggles, like, insurance, or, social media things, or marketing, whatever. Like that's, I think that's one of the things, is there's so much that we can be strengthened by, whether they're in the Christian sphere or not. We read a Sticky Team by Larry Osborne, and that was one of the things he talked about, was the way that they were communicating with mail outs. Well, they had a church member that was like his job. And so he sat down with Larry and was like, you need to do it this way and this way and this way. And here's the science behind it. And it completely changed the way that they were doing, their contact pieces. And so, he's like that aspect of networking, because maybe we try and carry a lot, not pastors,
Mhm.
right? We probably try and carry way more than we should. Some of that is placed on us just because it's the heavy crown of leadership, but some of that is just, I mean, we're doing it to ourselves. So, the leadership aspect of sharing it, of learning from others, of bringing other people along, even is really instrumental in all of this. So, oh, did you have something, Brian?
One more thought on that, talking about us being isolated and feeling like people aren't going through that. It doesn't necessarily have to be another pastor. Pastoring, coaching, school administration, and the city manager position are all very similar when it comes to public eye, public complaints, so to speak, those type of deals. And oftentimes they are longing for someone that understands their world, that side of their world of, at a moment's notice, everything can, fall off the cliff. So reach
Mhm.
out to them and network with them as well. And that, that gets you access into other places, but you're also being able to minister to them because you
Right.
understand their world.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and so one other thing I was going to add to that question is, as far as like encourage your calling, it's been cool, our connection with Dallas Baptist University, just to try and meet some of the influential professors over there, and especially within the Christian College of Christian Faith, because you have a lot of up and coming ministry leaders, like these men that are called to pastor, men and women that are going to be serving the church in some capacity. And so we've had some opportunities to interact, but just recently I got to go in and share about church revitalization. I mean, there's nothing more like encouraging to your calling than talking about your calling. But then
Right.
also, like, if I was sitting in that seat, what would I probably need to hear? What do
Yeah.
I know now that maybe I wouldn't have listened to then, but I know now that had maybe someone said it would have helped me out. And so it's kind of like this cool, like, let me introduce you to what God has called me to and what we've been able to see. But then also, let me give you some very specific challenges, because this generation, the platform of ministry seems to be so much more appealing and really tempting. And so, even kind of speak into that. I just, those moments where you get to talk about your calling and talk about your passion, I think that only encourages it and builds it up more. So I got one last question, and this might challenge us. I mean, I'm an extrovert. I don't know how you guys would say extrovert, introvert, or maybe somewhere in the middle, but for the introverts that are listening, what are some practical steps you might encourage them with to kind of manage the emotional and psychological challenges that they're going to face in networking? What would you guys say?
Well, I'm an ambivert. Uh, I'm an extroverted introvert. There's a couple books that are out there. One is called Quiet. Can't think of the other one's name right now. We'll get it in the show notes. That talk about being introverts in the church. That are really really good to help. Hardest thing for me to do is to walk up to like that. We know how important that 10 minutes before the service is. That is deathly terrifying to me,
Hmm.
to walk up to people that I don't know and just start a conversation. I'm getting way better at it. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. But you know, you just have to realize that people are wanting you to talk to them. They're wanting
Yeah.
you to communicate to them. That's a psychological hurdle you have to get over. But once you do, it opens up your ministry immensely. The only suggestion I can give to that, and for those that are going to be like, well, he doesn't understand, I'm sorry. You just have to do it. Like
Yeah.
tell yourself you have to do it. And when I found out I was going to be in this leadership cohort, because I really didn't have a chance or a choice, um, I was like, I don't want to do this. But once I got there, I was like, man, there's benefit here. There's lots and lots of benefit to do that. So you just have to take that step of bold courage and get past it. But Kyle could probably answer this even better than I can because he's wiser than me.
I don't think so, because I'm very much an extrovert. When you talk about like, oh man, that first 10 minutes before a service, I'm like, I live for that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, new people, like, let's
Yeah.
hang out. Like, I want to be your best friend. That's the type of person I am.
Yeah.
And but I am married to an introvert who really has helped me understand introverts well. And then I've served at churches where the pastors, there are pastors on staff who are introverts, and so I've got to see that that personality type not be a hindrance on
Mhm.
ministry, but actually activated for great connection with people.
Mhm.
Because as an extrovert, there are people that I cannot network with effectively
Yeah.
because I am too much for them. Like I get that. They're I'm too talkative, too much energy. And so I have to recognize and start realizing where people's heart is in conversation. I think one thing that is a danger for extroverts is we can do all of the networking on our own. We can make every connection. We can build relationships. We can make people feel loved and appreciated because we give them that energy and that presence, right? One of the things that I found people in, and you know, it might be a generalization, but introverts in a pastoral role are really good at delegating some of that networking out and then doing it alongside them.
Mhm.
I've seen a ton of that of like, okay, I have to have a lunch meeting. I'm bringing I'm bringing my student pastor along with me because he's going to ask a lot of questions and get the ball rolling. And I'm really good at listening, and I'm going to sit back and listen and take this in and say the things that are really poignant in those moments. So that's one thing I would say, and I've seen that in my wife and some of the roles she's stepped into where she's had to do more out there things. Well, she's done it alongside a lot of people and asked a lot of good questions about how to engage. But you're right, Bryan. Like at some point, you got to do it. Like not every meeting is going to have somebody there to be a cushion. You do have to do that. And being a pastor, being a lead pastor is a front facing role,
Mhm.
and so you have to do that work, even though it's not really your thing. I know another thing about introverts is they need to recharge.
Yeah.
So know what your
Mhm.
recharge points are. Know who helps you recharge or what activities help you recharge, and when you have big, high activity days, high personality days, know and plan where you're going to recharge because the next day it's gonna happen again. I mean, that's just pastoring. So
Yeah. Yeah, you checked a lot of the boxes that just kind of came to mind. I think the one thing that I want to say to the introvert is like that that personality type, right? God designed you that way. And I've found
amen.
with introverts, like one of the cool things is intentionality. So for
Yeah.
me, my personality can come off as disingenuous, especially to an introvert, because I'm not
Right.
doing it to be big, to be large, to be loud. Like that's just I enjoy people. Like I enjoy the first 10
Mhm.
minutes or the 10 minutes right before. Like I love walking around a room and talking with people and all that kind of stuff. But I've found, like, especially with introverts, there's a lot more intentionality and purpose behind their conversations. And so a lot of times they're
Mhm.
coming in and they're giving you details that maybe you flew
Mhm.
by because you were working a room or whatever it might be that you want to say in a more positive way. I think that there's value in that. And so lean into that, but also what's been said now twice, I'll say it a third time is, but suck it up, buttercup. You got to do it. Like this is a part
Mhm.
of pastoring all of the sheep, right? So you've got to engage them, but be cautious with, how you're going to kind of settle in after you've exhausted yourself kind of relationally, emotionally, psychologically, all that good stuff. So,
Can I
Yep.
just one more note, just practically for networking, is take notes. I have a I have a note sheet, and this isn't like spying on people or anything like that. But when somebody mentions something that's maybe potentially a prayer request, I go ahead and like write it down as a note for me to be praying for them. They say, "Oh, my kid's got this thing coming up," and they're just talking in casual conversation. I treat it like a prayer request. And I take a note about that. So the next
Mhm.
time I meet with them, say, "Hey, how did your kid's thing go?" It's not a manipulative thing. It's a shepherding thing, right? We do this, and I think you should do this with your church members. Take notes about how you can be caring for them, and remember well the things they ask for and their needs, or some of their personality traits. When you've stepped into the bear traps, on people, like take notes of those things so when you go into those meetings. But do that for anybody you network with. I think it's a really helpful tool. So I just want to toss that out there.
Yeah, yeah, you're right on that, Kyle. And it's not just the shepherding aspect of it. You have the pastoral thought process there, but be engaged in any conversation or meeting you're in, because somebody might say something off the cuff or that everybody else misses that down the road is going to be very, very, very beneficial for your church or for your ministry. And you just need to grab that and say, okay. And then 6 weeks later, our hot water heater just exploded. I don't know a plumber, but that person does, that kind of stuff. That the whole idea of networking is to be actively engaged with the people that you're talking to and building relationships with them. And so not going in like a salesman like some people do, but go in and genuinely want to connect with people, and not what can they always provide for me, but what can I help them with as well.
All those things is what made Michael Scott such a great regional manager. Well, hey, thanks for listening, for putting up with us, for journeying with us through the thoughts and processes of networking. We hope it encouraged you. I want to encourage you to make sure that you're following us on all the social medias. As you listen to the episode today, feel free to share it out. Of course, we want to encourage other pastors, other ministry leaders, or just church members, not just church members. Dang, shouldn't have said just to just understand these aspects of ministry. We appreciate that you respect us enough to listen in. And we look forward to coming at you again. In the meantime, make sure that you update your Rolodexes. We'll talk with you next time.